Now, whenever I think of family law, I think of about four different acts of parliament. One of them being, as I mentioned earlier in this session, the Child Protection Act. Another being the Matrimonial Causes Act. Another being the Domestic Violence Protection Order Act. And then there's something called the Matrimonial Causes Rules. Okay? There's also the fifth one, which is a Matrimonial Causes Summary Jurisdiction Act. All right, so 4 to 5 acts and rule that you'd be dealing with, that we as lawyers are familiar with. For those of us who practice in family law, we know those inside out from start to finish. Matrimonial Causes Act goes back from 1879, and then I think the most recent of all of them would be the Child Protection Act, which is probably just in the last decade. All right. When we speak of criminal law, there are several acts of parliament when it comes to criminal law, but for the sake of this presentation, we're thinking about the Criminal Procedure Code, the Penal Code, and the Sexual Offences Act. Okay, so just those three when I'm speaking about wives, family, and criminal law. So in family law, Child Protection Act, Matrimonial Causes Act, Matrimonial Causes Summary Jurisdiction Act, Matrimonial Causes Rules, Domestic Violence and Protection Orders Act. And then in criminal law, CPC, Criminal Procedure Code, the Penal Code, and the Sexual Offences Act. All right, so now we need to distinguish between assault by a spouse and rape, because we're talking about wives, okay? Rape is the act of any person not under 14 years of age having intercourse with another person without their consent, and in brackets I'm putting who is not their spouse. Okay, so anybody, you're 50, you're 20, you're 30, you're 70, you're 90, you have intercourse with somebody without their permission, and that person is not your wife, you're committing rape. But Section 15 of that act, the very same act, Section 15, Sexual Offences Act is the act I'm talking about today, says any person who has sexual intercourse with his spouse without the consent of the spouse is guilty of the offense of sexual assault by spouse and liable to imprisonment for a term of 15 years. A lot of persons tell me they didn't know that. So when you hear rape under Section 3 is when you have sex with somebody without their permission and they're not your wife, it's called rape. So a lot of persons felt, well, oh, see, you can't rape your wife because Section 3 clearly says if you're having intercourse with someone without their permission and they're not your wife, that's rape. So if I'm having sex with someone without their permission and it is my wife, then it's not rape. That's how persons understand it. So when you hear persons like the Prime Minister or a talk show host saying there's no rape in marriage, it's technical. It's not called rape. But if you have sex with your spouse without their permission, it's called sexual assault by spouse. So we've just, in law, phrased it in an interesting way. So persons can stand on it that there's no such thing as rape in marriage in the Bahamas. And technically they're right. But on the other hand, you've had sex without someone's permission, and it is a crime in this act. If that person is your wife, yes. But we just don't call it rape. We call it sexual assault by spouse. And then you have to understand in what type of scenarios would that offense occur. All right? So I'm going to try and, in the time that I have left, to explain that to you. But the gist of it is where a husband and wife have had an argument. Let's say they had an argument on Thanksgiving night, Thanksgiving dinner, and they agree to take a break. So the husband and the wife agree that he's going to go and stay by his parents for a few months to cool down, and she's going to stay with the kids. So they have a separation agreement. He then decides a month in of them not being together, not talking, this separation agreement they've come up with, that he's going home with his key, 1 o'clock in the morning, and he's taking some. Is he wife? The court can look at that and say, well, you have a separation agreement between the two of you where you are living separate and apart, that you didn't agree to continue living as husband and wife. And the Act, Section 15, speaks to that scenario being one of the situations in which you could be charged with the offense of sexual assault by spouse because your wife, who you had sex with, didn't give her consent. So we're not going to call it rape, but it's called sexual assault by a spouse. The other scenario is where you've secured a decree nisi. So your husband filed for divorce, you have children and property, so you on the first stage, which is the petition hearing, a decree nisi is granted, and the ancillary matters are adjourned to chambers, which will take another 3-4 months or so to come up. But in between that, as far as he's concerned, we're not fully divorced as yet, and he decides he's going to come by and take his wife again. That is rape to many of us, but by the act, we don't call it rape. We call it sexual assault by a spouse. Another scenario will be where there's a judicial separation. This couple has lived separate and apart for years because of a legal judicial separation order in court. However, they went to a graduation together for one of the kids in the States or Grand Bahama or New Providence, for instance. They all stay in a hotel and the husband decides, I'm taking some of this. They're still my wife. Again, to some of us it's rape, and to others, by law, that offense and that act is called the offense of sexual assault by spouse. All right, so those are some of the scenarios. Another scenario would be where there's an order of the court. And some of you had heard me speak before and explain to you what is an emergency protection order. So someone has been abusive to you or another dependent in the home, and you've gotten an emergency protection order to put them out, to not interfere with you and whoever else in this home. But this person decides, hey, when you come to drop the kids off, they take in some. Because we're not divorced, still husband and wife, and the law says you can't rape your wife. So if there's an order in place, for an emergency protection order, for instance, that person, some of us, would have committed rape, but in law, it is called sexual assault by spouse, and they can be sentenced to prison for up to 15 years. All right? Another scenario, this will be the fifth one and the last one that I'm going to move on. Another scenario will be where you have notice of a petition. So the wife calls and says, listen, the police are on their way to serve you with the divorce petition. I'm divorcing you. Husband gets out of the house or leaves work and ducks the police for weeks. Police can't catch up with them. They have notice. The police has sent them a picture of it. We need to serve you. The wife has sent him a picture, email it. We need to serve you. The person refuses to go and accept the documents and decides one night going home and taking some because we're not divorced. Again, you would have committed the offense of sexual assault by spouse, which is punishable up to 15 years in prison, all right? So now I'm going to jump over to Section 2 of the Matrimonial Causes Act. So again, that was the Sexual Offenses Act. The Matrimonial Causes Act of 1879 that I mentioned before, at Section 2, it defines cruelty as voluntary conduct that is reprehensible or which is a departure from the normal standards of conjugal kindness occasioning injury to the health of the other spouse or reasonable apprehension of it, which, if the complainant/victim continues to endure, it would be detrimental to their health. Cruelty is one of the 6 grounds a wife has for divorce under family law, cruelty. But cruelty isn't just physical abuse. Cruelty is physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse. All right, so when I'm tying in today the whole Sexual Offenses Act, criminal law, and family law, Matrimonial Causes Act, Child Protection Act, etc., I'm trying to show that women do have recourse in light of this case a few months back about the rape in marriage. Women can have their husbands charged with what some of us consider rape, but is legally termed sexual assault by spouse under Section 15 of the Act. Or the wife can go under the Matrimonial Causes Act, as that wife did in that case that was reported back in August. And the wife can go on the grounds of cruelty and explain that she feels like a rape victim in these situations, okay? Now, Section 16 lists those 6 grounds. One of them, as I said, is cruelty, and then the other are adultery, desertion, living separate and apart for 5 years, that your husband has committed a homosexual act or has been found guilty of rape. So there's cruelty and 5 other grounds for divorce, all right? And now I'm going to distinguish between Magistrate Court and Supreme Court, and then we'll wrap up for the day. So nobody can go before the Magistrate Court for a divorce. Absolutely nobody. Because the Magistrate Court does not do divorces. So if you hear somebody running that story on you that they divorced, they went to Magistrate Court, and the magistrate gave them a divorce. There's no such thing. You cannot get divorced in the magistrate court. You can get a legal separation in the magistrate court. You can get an emergency protection order in magistrate court. You can get a bound over in magistrate court. You can get child support in magistrate court, but you cannot get divorce in the magistrate court. The magistrate court has no jurisdiction to do divorces. You can get divorce in the Supreme Court. All right? So magistrate court, legal separation, bound over, emergency protection orders, child support. Supreme Court, divorces. Two different things. With legal separation, you're still married. But the court just said that you can live separate and apart. But if you have a legal separation order and then you two start talking and buddy, get back cool again, start seeing each other, living together after 3 months, the legal separation that you think you have falls away. So a lot of persons would say, we got together, we tried it out, it didn't work out, we still legally separated. No, you're not. That legal separation order would have fell away once you stay together continuously for over a 3-year period. That's what the order should say. If you look at the act and if you look at the order, it should speak to that, okay? So Supreme Court for divorces, magistrate court would be for your legal separation, bound over, child support, emergency protection orders. You would need an emergency protection order, but you can get in magistrate court or in the Supreme Court if you feel that you are in an environment where you are not safe with your spouse. You are able to get an emergency protection order literally within 24 to 48 hours. It's a very, very quick process. Make the application and the judge will grant an interim order that this person has to vacate the home until such time as the court can hear the entire case from all sides, okay? It's a pretty straightforward process. So I'm going to stop there for the day because I realize we've been recording for 54 minutes, even though I've been doing the pauses, and the guys get to chop up and put their stuff in between. So again, my name is Renard Eric Henfield. I have been practicing for 19 years. I studied law for 6 years and I've been in Parliament for 1 term. And what I do is practice and teach law. How I do it, I try to use free legal clinics, these online sessions, 1-hour session every week. And why I do it is because I realize a lot of persons don't understand the law, don't understand the process, don't know what to do when they get to court as far as the evidence they need to lead, or don't understand what is the likely outcome in a particular type of case. Additionally, truth be told, I also do it because in educating persons on the law, the deficiencies and the strengths of it, you're able to point persons in the right direction and influence the changes in the process and the laws, all right? So that's who I am, that's what I do. The platform that we moved our online sessions from was Clubhouse, and we've moved now to the Everything Local, which is a Bahamian platform. And obviously we're talking about Bahamian laws, and these are various Bahamian professionals doing these videos like myself on a weekly basis, okay? So you can find the videos on everything-local.com. The dash is the minus sign, everythinglocal.com. And then the mobile app is Everything Local Bahamas, and it's free. You're able to get the push notifications, so subscribe and you download or you visit the web page and you'll get the notifications on when we're doing these sessions, okay? So again, everythinglocal.com, and we have another session coming up for you guys. Thank you, take care, all the best.